Next ratios are profitability ratios. And here it's very important that you are able to separate two subcategories. So the first subcategory where the first three ratios belong is investment profitability ratios. Investment profitability ratios. And the last two categories are sales profitability ratios. Sales profitability ratios. So let's do step by step. Return on equity, this has a very famous abbreviation ROE. Let's calculate. Average equity we just used a minute ago. So average equity we can calculate based on these two numbers. And net profit we can find from the income statement. And instead of net profit, Silvano is using profit for the period as a synonym for the net profit. And this is the challenge for the new analyst, is that the companies are using different vocabulary and you need to understand based on the structure of the statement what means what. So profit per period. You may also have question why sometimes the ratio formula has average here. The average you can find sometimes together with balance sheet items. Balance sheet items because balance sheet is moment series. So it's just 2 moments, 2 end of fiscal years. But as profit is periodic data, we need to make numerator and denominator as comparable as possible. So in that case, it makes sense to convert average equity, the balance sheet data, into periodic data as well. It means that we will find the average of these two numbers. For the stock-listed companies, you can use the chronologic mean, what we studied in the previous video. But as Statistics Estonia is using the annual average, we use end of year and beginning of year data to calculate average equity. And when you have done your calculations, the answer is 30.9%. 30.9%. So what does it mean? Let's train how to make technical conclusions now. For the technical conclusions, the easiest way is that you take denominator equal to €1. For example, here the denominator is average equity. And as you remember, our answer was 30.9%. And then we can have technical conclusion that for the each euro invested by the owners, each euro invested by the owners generated 30.9 euro cents as net profit. Each euro invested to equity generated 30.9 euro cents as net profit. So that's the easy way to do technical calculation, technical conclusions when you are somewhere, for example, in the middle of the meeting. For the return on equity, some rule of thumb is that it should be somewhere between 15 to 20%. For the startup companies where the risks are higher, its return on equity should be higher as well if the company is flying. And for the monopolies where the risks are lower, then it's fine to have lower return on equity as well. No, we see that Silvano has over 20% or even a bit over 30%, so it seems that companies doing good with their investment profitability. The next ratio is a return on assets, which has very common abbreviation as well, ROA, and average assets we can find from the balance sheet. So that's the average of these two numbers. And when you do your calculations, you see that the answer is 23.4, and the technical conclusion is that each euro invested to assets generated 23.4 euro cent as net profit. Each euro invested to assets generated 23.4 euro cent as net profit. And the last out of three investment profitability ratio is a return on capital. This has also famous abbreviations. The most common I have seen is ROCE, ROCE. Sometimes I have also seen ROIC, ROIC, or sometimes just ROC, but the most common in my experience is return on capital employed, so ROCE. As English people, they really emphasize that that's the employed capital. So employed is that what you have raised from the owners and from the banks. And actually that's the best ratio when you want to compare the companies, because some companies they use more equity, some companies they use more loan capital, but you as an analyst for you it doesn't matter how the capital is raised, you just want to analyze how profitable these investments to capital have been. And that's why here in the numerator you need to sum up earnings before taxes, because this is what the owners decide, how much to distribute dividend, how much to keep in the company. And interest expense from company point of view, actually that's the profit banks are generating from the company. And it's very important that you sum up these numbers. So if in your statement interest expense is shown with minus, you need to take absolute value of this number, because you need to add interest expense to the earnings before taxes. Then you have done your calculations properly. As in Silvano's case, we don't have any loans. It means that we don't have any interest expense as well. So the answer is 0. The average capital we have already calculated when we calculated capital per employee. So just let's have a quick look from where we can find earnings per before tax. And here it is. They use vocabulary profit before income tax. The answer is 40.1%. 40.1%. It means that each euro invested to capital generated 40.1 € as earnings before taxes and interest expenses. And by the way, earnings before taxes added on interest expenses, this is the another way how to calculate EBIT, as EBIT has many meanings in financial vocabulary. So these are the investment profitability ratios. From a comparability point of view, this is the best ratio to compare the companies, and probably from the owner's point of view, from their point of view, the most important ratio is return on equity. Let's move to sales profitability. Sales profitability, you divide operating and net profit by net sales, and you will get operating margin and profit margin. And profit margin, in some sources you will find alternative name as net margin. In Silvano's case, the answer is 28.5 for the operating margin and 18.5 for the profit margin. So it means that for each euro invested for each euro of net sales generated 28.5 € as operating profit and 18.5 € as net profit. Each euro sold generated 28.5 € as net profit and 18.5 € as net profit. So operating profit 28.5 and net profit 18.5 €. Again, how it's compared with other companies in the industry, we will find out when starting our analysis. So these are the sales profitability ratios.